The afternoon sun was warm but not too hot. The streets were alive with the usual city noise. Cars honking, people chatting, the faint sound of music from a nearby street corner. Everyone seemed to be in a hurry, walking fast, checking their phones or carrying groceries and packages. Amid all this chaos, a little girl, no older than 7, was playing on the sidewalk. She had a small, colorful ball, the kind that bounced unpredictably when it hit the ground. She was laughing as she kicked it lightly, trying to catch it herself as it bounced away. The little girl was completely absorbed in her game. She didn't notice the busy street just a few steps ahead. She didn't notice the cars moving fast, the ones that were supposed to stop at the crosswalk but often didn't. She was focused entirely on her ball, her little legs chasing it with all the energy and excitement that only children have. Across the street, a woman was walking back home after a long day. She had finished work and was carrying a small tote bag with her essentials. She wasn't thinking about anything in particular, just the quiet relief of finally heading home. The city around her felt ordinary, even familiar, and she felt like just another face among the crowd. But then something unusual happened. The little girl's ball bounced off the curb, rolling straight into the street. The girl instinctively ran after it, completely unaware that a car was coming fast. The driver honked, trying to get her attention, but she didn't hear it. Her little shoes tapped quickly on the asphalt, her arms flailing slightly as she chased the ball. Time seemed to slow down in that moment, at least for anyone watching closely. The woman across the street saw it. In an instant, her heart stopped. She didn't pause to think or hesitate. She ran. Her feet moved quickly, almost as if they had a mind of their own. She didn't care about the cars, the people staring, or the noise around her. All that mattered was the little girl. With a sudden leap, she reached the child just as the car drew dangerously close. She grabbed her by the arm and pulled her back onto the sidewalk. The little girl stumbled but remained unharmed, her eyes wide with fear and shock. She clung to the woman tightly, her small arms wrapped around her waist. "Are you okay?" the woman asked, her voice calm but filled with concern. She checked quickly to make sure the girl hadn't been hurt in the brief scare. The girl nodded, her tears mixing with laughter and relief. She didn't know what to say, and the woman didn't rush her. For a few moments, they just stood there, catching their breath. Around them, people had started to gather. Some clapped, others whispered to each other, clearly impressed by what had just happened. A few took out their phones, capturing the moment on video. But the woman didn't want attention. She brushed off the praise quickly, insisting that she was just doing what anyone would do. The little girl's parents appeared a minute later, rushing from a nearby cafe. The mother grabbed her daughter, holding her close while the father scanned the street, clearly shaken. "Thank you," the father said quickly, looking at the woman with genuine gratitude. "You saved her life," the woman smiled softly. "It was nothing," she said, though inside her heart was still racing. She didn't want recognition, didn't want any reward. Saving a child's life was just something that needed to be done. She knew that in her mind, and that was enough. What she didn't notice at the time was a man sitting inside a sleek, dark car parked a little further down the street. He had been waiting for someone, but his attention had shifted when he saw the little girl dart into danger. He watched frozen for a moment as the woman acted without hesitation. Every second felt stretched as he saw the car speed toward the child, and the woman swoop in to save her. The man's heart pounded. He was wealthy, powerful, and used to controlling situations, but this was different. This was pure bravery, uncalculated and instinctive. He had seen a lot in his life, but he had never witnessed such courage. From inside his car, he could see the little girl safe in the woman's arms, and a wave of relief washed over him. He realized that the world sometimes surprises you with unexpected heroes, and he knew he had just witnessed one. The woman didn't see him, didn't know she was being observed. After making sure the little girl was safe, she started to walk away, her pace returning to normal, her thoughts already drifting back to her own life. She felt a little shaken, yes, but also calm in a strange way. She had done what she needed to do, and that was enough. The little girl waved at her shyly, and the woman waved back, smiling. "Be careful next time," she called, her tone gentle, almost motherly. The girl nodded vigorously, clutching her ball tightly now as if it were a shield. By the time the woman reached her street, she felt her adrenaline fading. She replayed the event in her head, how quickly it had happened, how instinctively she had acted, and how fragile life could be. She knew she had been lucky too, even a fraction of a second later. and the outcome could have been very different. Meanwhile, the father in the car couldn't stop thinking about her. He admired her courage, her calm under pressure, and the way she didn't expect anything in return. He knew he wanted to meet her, to thank her properly, and maybe even get to know the person behind such a brave act. He made a mental note to find her, though he had no idea how he would do it. The city was full of people after all, and she was just one among many. Back at her small apartment, the woman finally sat down with a cup of tea. She let herself relax for the first time since the incident. Her hands were still a little shaky, and her mind kept replaying the moment. She didn't feel proud or boastful. She just felt a deep sense of responsibility, a reminder that life was precious and unpredictable. That evening, she went about her normal routine, cooking dinner, checking her mail, tidying up her home. But a small part of her kept thinking about the little girl. She wondered if the child would be okay, if she would be scared to play outside again, if she would remember this day. The thought made her smile softly. Sometimes she realized the smallest actions could make the biggest difference. She didn't know it yet, but her life was about to change in ways she couldn't imagine. What had seemed like a single, isolated moment of courage would ripple far beyond that street corner. She had acted out of instinct, but others were watching. And sometimes the world notices even when you least expect it. As the sun set, casting golden light across the buildings, she leaned against her window, looking out at the city. The streets were still bustling, the noise still constant, but something felt different. She felt a quiet sense of connection to the people around her, to the city, to life itself. A small act of courage had reminded her, and unknowingly, others how fragile and precious life could be, and how one person's actions could protect and change it. That night, as she went to sleep, she didn't dream of fame or recognition. She dreamt only of the little girl, of safety, of kindness. She dreamt of a world where people acted out of instinct, not for praise, but because it was the right thing to do. And in that dream, she felt peaceful, knowing she had done exactly that. After that afternoon, life slowly returned to its usual rhythm for the woman. She went to work, ran errands, and spent time with her family and friends. Yet the memory of what had happened on the street stayed with her. She remembered the little girl's wide eyes, the sound of the car's horn, the way her own heart had raced when she ran forward. It was strange how a few seconds could feel like an eternity. She often thought about that moment quietly, mostly to herself without mentioning it much to anyone. Meanwhile, the little girl's father could not stop thinking about the woman who had saved his child. He replayed the event in his mind over and over. He had seen courage in its purest form, unplanned and uncalculated, and he found himself admiring it more and more. It wasn't just that she had saved his daughter. It was the way she had acted so quickly, without fear, without hesitation, and without expecting anything in return. That kind of bravery, he thought, was rare. The father had spent his life surrounded by wealth and influence. He was used to people acting in ways that served themselves, their careers, or their reputation. But what he had seen that day was different. This woman had acted out of instinct, out of compassion, out of humanity. He wanted to meet her properly, to thank her, to make sure she knew how much he appreciated what she had done. But he also did not want to make it awkward or force anything. In the days that followed, he quietly asked around, trying to find out who she was. He asked neighbors, store owners, and even people who had witnessed the incident. Everyone described her the same way, calm, brave, modest. But finding her in a busy city was not easy. She was just one person among thousands living an ordinary life. For the woman, life went on as normal. She tried not to dwell on the incident too much, although it sometimes came up in casual conversation when someone mentioned the news. The story of her act had spread quickly on social media. Someone had captured a video of the rescue and it had gone viral. People were calling her a hero, sharing the video and praising her courage. But she felt uncomfortable with the attention. She never wanted recognition. To her, it was just a matter of doing what was right. One evening, after finishing her dinner, she scrolled through social media and was surprised to see her own video trending. People were commenting, sharing, and praising her. Some even called her a hero of the city. She felt a strange mix of embarrassment and gratitude. She hadn't expected this at all. She never imagined that her small act could reach so many people. Despite the attention online, the woman kept living her life quietly. She returned to her routines, going to work, visiting friends, and taking care of her home. She thought about the little girl sometimes, wondering if she had smiled again, if she had forgiven herself for running into the street. But most of all, she tried to forget about the attention and focus on what mattered in her daily life. Unbeknownst to her, the little girl's father had finally managed to track her down. Through a network of contacts and some careful inquiries, he found her address. But he didn't want to surprise her or make her feel uncomfortable. He wanted to meet her in person, in a respectful and meaningful way. So, he sent a discreet note through her building management asking if she would be willing to meet him to receive his thanks. When the woman received the note, she was surprised. She had expected thanks from the parents on the street, but a private invitation from the father himself was unexpected. She hesitated at first. She didn't want to be involved in anything that felt like a show or publicity. But something about the sincerity in the note convinced her to accept. She agreed to meet him at a quiet cafe, somewhere neutral, not crowded, not flashy. The day of the meeting arrived. She dressed simply, wanting to be comfortable but presentable. Her mind raced with questions. Who was this man really? Was he sincere? Or was this some kind of trap for attention? She pushed aside her doubts and focused on the reason for the meeting. Gratitude. That was the heart of it. She wanted nothing more than to ensure the little girl's safety mattered to the people involved. When she arrived at the cafe, she saw him waiting. He stood as she entered, smiling politely, his demeanor calm but warm. There was a sense of ease in his presence, not the kind of tension that often came with people of wealth and influence. She realized immediately that he was genuine. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, shaking her hand. His voice was steady and his eyes reflected deep gratitude. "I wanted to make sure I thanked you personally. What you did for my daughter. I can't even put it into words," she smiled softly. "It was nothing, really. I just did what anyone would do. Anyone would have done the same if they saw a child in danger." He shook his head gently. "No, not everyone would. Not with such calm, such quick action, and without thinking about themselves. That's what amazes me. You acted with courage and kindness, and you didn't expect anything in return. That's rare." She looked down for a moment, feeling shy. "I guess. I just reacted. I didn't think about it. I just wanted her to be safe." They talked for a while, quietly and naturally. She learned about him, not as a wealthy father, but as a human being concerned for his child and genuinely touched by her bravery. He in turn learned about her life, her everyday struggles, and the simple joys that made her who she was. They talked about family, work, and small dreams. The conversation was easy, without pretension, filled with honesty and human connection. During the meeting, he mentioned that he wanted to do something to help her, not as charity, but as an opportunity. He wanted to make sure that her bravery and kindness could open doors for her in ways she might not have imagined. She listened carefully, cautious but curious. She didn't want favors or charity, but she appreciated his sincerity. It wasn't about money or status. It was about recognition of her character, her courage, and her potential. They discussed ideas quietly, without pressure. Educational opportunities, career advice, mentorship. He wanted to offer support in any way she felt comfortable accepting. She was hesitant at first, worried it might feel awkward or forced. But as they talked, she realized that this was not about fame, not about being rewarded for a single act. It was about life, opportunity, and growth. It was about recognizing the good in someone and helping it flourish. As the conversation continued, the woman felt a sense of calm she hadn't expected. She had acted on instinct months ago, thinking nothing of it. Yet here she was, having a meaningful conversation that could shape her future. She realized that sometimes the world noticed acts of courage in ways that went far beyond the moment itself. They left the cafe together, talking casually about their plans, the city, and small things in life. She noticed that he didn't treat her differently because of who he was or what he had. He treated her as an equal, as someone worthy of respect, admiration, and care. For the first time in a long while, she felt that the world could be a place where good deeds were recognized and human kindness was valued. After that day, their connection grew quietly. They met occasionally, talked on the phone, and exchanged messages about everyday life. It wasn't a friendship based on wealth or status, but on mutual respect and human connection. She learned that sometimes acts of courage and kindness create bonds that transcend ordinary life, creating new paths and opportunities. At the same time, the little girl continued to recover from her scare. She often talked about the woman who had saved her, describing her bravery and the kindness she had felt in that moment. Her parents saw the change in their daughter, how she valued safety, how she understood courage, and how she respected acts of kindness. The woman had made an impression not only on the girl's life, but on her entire family, even without realizing it at first. The woman herself felt a quiet transformation. She understood that bravery was not about heroism for recognition, but about instinct, heart, and care for others. She saw how one small act could ripple outward, touching lives in ways no one could predict. She didn't feel pride in the way the world often measures it, but a deep, personal sense of fulfillment. Over the following weeks, the story of her act continued to spread online. People shared videos, wrote posts, and commented on how inspiring it was. Some even reached out to her to share their own experiences or to ask advice. She responded carefully, always humble, never claiming more than she had done. She didn't see herself as a celebrity or hero. She saw herself as a person who had acted out of compassion, and she wanted that message to remain at the center. Yet, through all this attention, she also learned something important. She realized that heroism doesn't always need an audience. It doesn't need recognition, wealth, or fame. Sometimes it's simply the courage to act when the moment calls for it, the instinct to protect someone, and the willingness to step forward without hesitation. That was the lesson that had quietly reshaped her life, and it was a lesson she would carry with her forever. Evenings became a time for reflection. She often thought about the city streets, the little girl, and the fleeting moment when life and danger intersected. She thought about how fragile life was and how much courage mattered in even the smallest acts. And she thought about the man who had reached out not for show, but to recognize humanity, kindness, and bravery. In this quiet period after the incident, she began to see life differently. She saw opportunities in unexpected places, connections where she hadn't noticed them before, and the potential for good in people around her. The city was still chaotic, the streets still crowded, but she moved through it with a new awareness, a quiet confidence born not of recognition, but of the knowledge that she had made a difference, and that difference mattered. Weeks passed since the woman had met the little girl's father at the cafe. Life continued in its usual rhythm, but there was a quiet change in the air. The woman still went to work, ran errands, and spent time with her friends and family. Yet she felt a new sense of awareness, a subtle shift in her life that she couldn't quite explain. Something about that meeting had lingered in her mind. It wasn't just about the gratitude or recognition. It was about connection, understanding, and the ripple effect of one brave action. The little girl's father, too, could not stop thinking about her. He often found himself replaying the moments he had seen on that street, the instinctive courage, the calm under pressure, and the way she had acted without thinking about herself at all. He realized that what she had done went far beyond saving his daughter's life. It was a reflection of character, integrity, and humanity. He wanted to honor that, not in a showy way, but in a way that truly mattered. He began inviting her to small casual meetings. Sometimes it was for coffee, sometimes for a walk in a quiet park, and occasionally he asked for her opinion on small projects he was working on in his community. At first she was cautious. She didn't want to feel obligated, and she didn't want any pressure. But she quickly realized that his intentions were sincere. He wasn't trying to impress her, show off, or make her feel indebted. He genuinely wanted to connect and, if she allowed, to help in meaningful ways. One afternoon, he invited her to visit a community project he was funding. It was a small library in a part of the city where resources were limited, a place where children could come to read, learn, and explore new worlds through books. She agreed to go, curious to see what he had built and how it might impact the neighborhood. When she arrived, she was struck by the warmth of the place. Children were sitting on colorful rugs, flipping through books, and chatting quietly. The walls were painted in soft, cheerful colors with murals of animals and trees. There was a small reading corner with cushions and beanbags, and a few volunteers helping the kids find books they liked. It was clear that this space was more than just a library. It was a safe haven, a place where young minds could grow and dreams could take root. The little girl's father greeted her warmly and gave her a tour. He explained how he had always wanted to give back to the community, but he had never imagined how meaningful it would be to invite someone like her to see it firsthand. He wanted her to see the difference that courage, compassion, and care could make, not just for one child, but for many. She walked through the library quietly, observing the children and the volunteers. She noticed how much they appreciated the space, how engaged they were in reading and learning. She felt a sense of connection to them, realizing that small acts of kindness and support could create lasting change. It reminded her of the moment she had saved the little girl, the way one decision could ripple outward, touching lives in ways she could not predict. As they sat in the reading corner, she asked him why he had wanted her to see this place. He smiled, a soft, genuine expression. "I wanted you to see the impact that care can have," he said. "You acted courageously that day without thinking about yourself. That same courage, that same care, can make a difference in other ways too. I wanted you to see that and maybe even help shape it." She thought about his words. At first, she felt unsure. After all, she was not used to influencing large projects or shaping initiatives. But as he spoke, she realized that her perspective mattered. Her experiences, her instincts, and her understanding of people could contribute in meaningful ways. She didn't have to be wealthy, famous, or powerful to make a difference. She just needed to care and act. Over the next few weeks, she became involved in the project, offering her time and insight. She helped organize reading sessions, worked with children on small activities, and shared ideas for making the space more engaging. She didn't expect recognition or reward. She simply enjoyed seeing the impact she could have. The children responded to her warmth and enthusiasm, and she found herself forming a quiet, powerful bond with them. Meanwhile, the little girl she had saved continued to grow. She often visited the library with her parents, sometimes sneaking a peek to wave at the woman who had saved her life. The little girl's parents noticed how inspired their child was, how she was learning the value of courage and kindness from real-life examples. They thanked the woman quietly, again and again, acknowledging that her bravery had extended far beyond that single moment on the street. The woman began to notice a change in herself as well. She felt more confident, more aware of her own abilities, and more capable of making a positive difference in her community. She realized that courage wasn't just about dramatic moments like saving a child from danger. It was also about everyday decisions, small acts of kindness, and the willingness to step forward when help was needed. One day, the little girl's father invited her to a meeting with other community volunteers. They were planning a new program for children, focused on mentorship and personal growth. She listened carefully, offering her perspective based on her own experiences. Her insights were valued, and she realized that her voice mattered in ways she had never imagined. She wasn't just a passerby or a hero of a single incident. She was becoming an active participant in shaping lives and opportunities for others. During one of these sessions, a young volunteer asked her how she had found the courage to act that day on the street. She smiled softly, remembering the moment. "I didn't think about courage at the time," she said. "I just acted. I saw someone in danger and I wanted to help. Sometimes that's all it takes, just the decision to do the right thing." Her words stayed with the group. They reflected on how simple acts, when done with care and instinct, could inspire others. They realized that heroism didn't need grand gestures. It could exist in quiet moments, in the choices people made every day. Her humility and honesty became a model for everyone involved, showing that courage and kindness could coexist in ordinary life. The woman continued to balance her regular life with this growing involvement in the community. She still went to work, managed her home, and spent time with friends and family. But now, her days were enriched by meaningful activities that allowed her to make a difference. She found a deep sense of fulfillment in this work, a feeling that what she did truly mattered. The little girl, too, was thriving. She began to understand the value of helping others, inspired by both the woman who saved her and the lessons she learned at the library. She noticed how kindness could spread, how courage could create opportunities, and how people could come together to support one another. Her parents were proud, seeing their child grow into someone thoughtful, empathetic, and aware of the impact she could have on the world around her. As weeks turned into months, the woman's involvement in the community grew. She helped organize workshops, led storytelling sessions, and encouraged children to pursue their interests. She became a familiar and respected presence, not because of fame or recognition, but because of her genuine care, patience, and dedication. People admired her not for a single heroic moment, but for the consistency and sincerity of her actions. At the same time, her relationship with the little girl's father evolved naturally. It was not based on wealth, status, or obligation, but on mutual respect and shared values. They continued to meet, discuss projects, and support one another's efforts. Their connection was quiet but meaningful, built on trust and a shared understanding of what mattered most: helping others, fostering courage, and spreading kindness. The woman often reflected on how much her life had changed since that day on the street. She had never sought recognition, yet her actions had created opportunities she could never have imagined. She had made a real difference in the lives of children, families, and her community. And in the process, she had formed connections that enriched her own life, showing her that courage and kindness could open doors in unexpected ways. The little girl's father often expressed his gratitude, not just for the rescue, but for the ongoing impact she was making. He recognized that her influence extended far beyond a single moment, touching lives in meaningful and lasting ways. And the woman, in turn, found joy and purpose in these experiences, understanding that her instincts, compassion, and courage had created a ripple effect far greater than she could have imagined. One evening, as the woman walked home after helping with a storytelling session at the library, she paused to look at the city around her. The streets were busy, as they always were, but they felt different to her now. She noticed the people, the interactions, the small acts of kindness unfolding all around. She felt connected to the world in a way she had never experienced before. The moment she had acted to save a child's life had been just the beginning. What followed was a journey of connection, purpose, and transformation that touched not only her life but the lives of many others. She realized that her story, and the story of that day, was not about fame or recognition. It was about humanity, the instinct to act, the courage to step forward, and the ability to influence the world through kindness. That understanding became a guiding force in her life, shaping her choices, her actions, and her vision for the future. And as she continued to walk through the streets she had once only passed by, she carried with her the quiet satisfaction of knowing that a single act, done without expectation, could create a life-changing ripple, one that would extend far beyond the moment, touching countless lives in ways no one could fully measure. Life had taken a quiet but meaningful turn for the woman. Her days were still busy with work, errands, and the routines of everyday life, but something new had entered her world. She had begun to feel that her actions, even the small ones, could have a lasting impact. The meeting with the little girl's father and her involvement with the community library had shown her that courage and kindness could create real change. Now, opportunities were beginning to open that she had never imagined before. One morning, she received a message from the little girl's father. He invited her to meet him at his office, not for anything formal or intimidating, but to discuss a new idea he wanted her to be part of. She was curious and, despite her initial hesitation, agreed. When she arrived, she found him waiting with a warm smile. The office was elegant but welcoming, not overly flashy or intimidating. He had made sure the environment felt comfortable and safe, showing that he valued her presence and perspective. "Thank you for coming," he said as she entered. "I wanted to talk to you about something important. I've been thinking about how your courage and your perspective could help more than just the children at the library. I want to create a program that supports young women, especially those who face challenges like the ones you've told me about. I hope you'll consider helping me guide it." She listened carefully, her heart beating with a mix of excitement and nervousness. The idea was ambitious, but it also felt meaningful. It wasn't about money or fame. It was about creating opportunities, empowering others, and using real-life experience to inspire change. She realized that her voice, her insight, and her compassion could truly make a difference in ways she had never imagined. Over the next few weeks, they worked together to plan the program. It would provide mentorship, skills training, and opportunities for young women to explore their potential. She contributed ideas based on her own experiences, how challenges could be turned into opportunities, how confidence and courage could grow from small everyday actions, and how meaningful connections could change lives. Her input was valued, respected, and implemented. She found herself enjoying the process. She wasn't used to being asked for her opinion in such meaningful ways, and it gave her a sense of confidence she hadn't realized she was missing. The meetings were thoughtful and collaborative. She met with volunteers, educators, and local leaders, all committed to supporting young women in practical, real ways. She realized that her actions on the street months ago had opened a door, not just for herself, but for many others. Meanwhile, the little girl's father continued to support her quietly, never making her feel pressured or obligated. He valued her ideas, encouraged her growth, and recognized her contributions. He wasn't offering charity. He was offering opportunity, mentorship, and respect. That distinction was important to her. It allowed her to feel empowered rather than indebted, to see herself as capable rather than dependent, and to understand that her courage and compassion had real value. As the program began to take shape, the woman also noticed changes within herself. She felt more confident in her decisions, more willing to take risks, and more capable of influencing others positively. She saw how leadership didn't need a title, wealth, or status. It only required courage, vision, and a commitment to helping others. She realized that her life, which had once felt ordinary, was now filled with purpose, direction, and the knowledge that her actions mattered. One day, during a program planning session, a young woman approached her quietly. She had heard about the woman's act of bravery on the street and wanted to know how she had found the courage to act. The woman smiled softly, remembering the moment vividly. "I didn't think about courage at the time," she said. "I just saw someone in danger and I knew I had to help. Sometimes that's all it takes, making the choice to do what's right even when it's scary or unexpected." The young woman listened intently, clearly inspired. It was a small moment, but it reinforced something important. Courage and kindness could be contagious. One act, done without expectation, could motivate others to act in meaningful ways. She realized that her story, her experience, could serve as a guide for others navigating their own challenges, helping them understand that bravery and compassion were within everyone's reach. Meanwhile, the little girl continued to thrive, visiting the library and taking part in programs with her parents. She looked up to the woman who had saved her, seeing her as a role model of courage, strength, and kindness. Her parents noticed the impact of this influence, watching as their child learned valuable lessons about bravery, empathy, and responsibility. The woman's actions had created a ripple effect, touching not just one child but an entire family and extending further into the community. The woman also began to see her own community differently. She noticed the small acts of kindness happening around her every day, people helping strangers, volunteers dedicating time to support others, and friends offering quiet encouragement. She realized that the world was filled with opportunities to make a difference, and that courage didn't always need to be dramatic or dangerous. Sometimes it was simply a choice to care, to act, and to connect with others in meaningful ways. As the program grew, she became more involved in mentoring young women directly. She helped them build confidence, develop skills, and navigate challenges. She listened to their stories, shared her own experiences, and offered guidance without judgment. She found deep fulfillment in seeing their growth, knowing that she could make a lasting impact by sharing her knowledge, empathy, and perspective. The little girl's father often checked in, offering support and encouragement. He valued her contributions, respected her autonomy, and recognized her dedication. He continued to provide opportunities not as favors but as tools for empowerment. She began to understand that this relationship was more than gratitude. It was a partnership, built on mutual respect, shared goals, and a common commitment to helping others. Through this process, the woman also reflected on her own growth. She realized that courage wasn't a one-time event but a continuous choice. It wasn't about public recognition or praise but about doing what was right, even when no one was watching. She saw how her instincts on the street that day had set in motion a chain of events that allowed her to grow, connect, and influence the lives of many others. She also noticed the subtle ways in which people responded to her. Children, volunteers, and community members began to approach her with trust and respect. They valued her perspective and sought her guidance. She felt a quiet confidence that came not from power or status, but from the knowledge that she had acted with integrity and compassion, and that those qualities resonated with others. One evening, after a long day of mentoring and planning, she walked home through the familiar streets. The city had changed subtly in her eyes. She noticed the small gestures of kindness around her. A man helping an elderly woman cross the street, neighbors chatting and sharing laughter, volunteers cleaning up a park. She realized that her own actions had been part of a larger pattern, a ripple in the community that encouraged others to act with care and courage. The little girl she had saved continued to be a reminder of the power of action. The child's curiosity, empathy, and joy reflected the influence of the woman's bravery. Seeing the child grow, learn, and develop into someone thoughtful and confident reinforced the woman's sense of purpose. She understood that heroism was not just about a single dramatic moment. It was about the ongoing choices we make, the support we provide, and the courage we show in everyday life. As the weeks turned into months, the program grew stronger. More young women joined, inspired by the mentorship, the support, and the real-life examples of courage and kindness. Volunteers contributed their time and skills, motivated by the impact they could see firsthand. The woman became a trusted guide, not because of fame, wealth, or recognition, but because of her sincerity, compassion, and dedication. Her relationship with the little girl's father also deepened naturally. They shared ideas, collaborated on projects, and supported each other's efforts. It was a partnership built on trust, mutual respect, and shared values. He admired her courage and vision, while she appreciated his support and belief in her abilities. Together, they created opportunities that would have been impossible alone, demonstrating how collaboration, respect, and shared purpose could amplify impact. Through all of this, the woman never lost sight of the lesson she had learned that day on the street. Courage begins with a choice, kindness begins with care, and real change begins with action. She understood that these qualities could ripple outward, touching lives in ways that might never be fully seen or measured. Her own life had been transformed not by wealth, recognition, or status, but by the simple decision to act when it mattered most. Evenings became a time for reflection. She often thought about the little girl, the library, the mentorship program, and the countless small moments of kindness she had witnessed. She realized that her life had become richer, fuller, and more meaningful than she could have imagined. The courage she had shown had opened doors, created connections, and inspired others, and in doing so, it had transformed her own life as well. In quiet moments, she smiled, thinking about how one small act could have such far-reaching consequences. She had acted instinctively, without thought of reward, and yet that instinct had changed her life and the lives of others in ways she could never have predicted. She understood more deeply than ever that heroism was not measured by fame or fortune, but by the impact we have on the people around us, the courage we show, and the kindness we share. Months had passed since the woman had first rescued the little girl from the busy street. The days had brought change, growth, and new opportunities that she could never have imagined at the time. Her life, once ordinary and predictable, had transformed quietly but profoundly. The small act of courage that had started it all had blossomed into something far greater, a chain of events that affected not only her life, but the lives of many others in the community. Her involvement with the mentorship program continued to grow. More young women joined each week, eager to learn, explore their potential, and gain guidance from someone who had acted bravely in the face of danger. She met them with patience and warmth, listening to their stories, offering encouragement, and helping them see that they were capable of achieving more than they had ever imagined. Every smile, every word of appreciation, every sign of progress reinforced the importance of her presence and her actions. The little girl she had saved was thriving as well. She loved coming to the library and participating in the programs that the woman helped lead. She had grown curious, confident, and thoughtful. Her parents often shared stories with the woman about the little,